So the big question today is $500,000 enough to retire with? And I got a couple great ways to try to optimize this money, taking different withdrawal strategies. But first, before we get to those, we're going to have to talk about some qualifying questions first. And I think if anybody is going to go to a financial planner, this is the kind of questions that should get asked of you first, because I'm not a financial planner, but this is definitely the way I think and what I think needs to be asked. So let's do that first, okay? First off, how old are you? Why does it matter? Because how long you need the money to last matters. If you're 60, you need to get 25 to 30 years out of that money. If you're 65, you need 20 to 25 years. I'm not saying that you may not live longer, but the idea is that you still have to maximize your benefits of your money. Okay? So that's the first qualifier. How old are you? Number two, when do you plan to take Social Security? If you're 60 and you're not going to take Social Security to 65, and the $500,000 has got to last you until that starts and then longer, that changes the trajectory of your money a lot. So we're going to get to more of those, okay? We're going to get to more of that and why it matters. Thirdly, do you plan to start taking your Social Security at 62, 65, 67, 70? Again, changes how long that money's going to last. And it's important to know and have a plan for that so that you can plan around how long the money can last. Not necessarily will last, but how long it can last. And then you can optimize those things by a couple of the tricks I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. Okay? And I think last but not least, are you married or single? Because that does matter as well. Because if you're married, you have a spouse, wife or husband, whatever, and you're going to have joint Social Security, that changes the impact as well. Now, one more question, and really this is the default question I ask and I talk about every time we talk about money and how long money will last. And that question is this: what is your budget for retirement, and what is your minimal essential income? How much do you have to have every month to pay your essentials, to keep food, clothing, housing, etc.? You got to keep the lights on, you got to keep a roof, and you got to have food. Once you know those numbers, that also plays into this, right? All right, so just having some of those ideas in mind, we're just going to assume, because we have to have something to work with here, right? We have to have something to do the math with. So we're going to assume that you have $500K, you're 65, and that you're going to start taking retirement right now at 65. And I'm also going to assume, or I'm going to come up with, we're going to try to aim for $50,000 a year in income. I think everybody should have at least that. I know that people live on less. Again, this is a theory, but there's no reason that you shouldn't find a way to get to $500K a month, or I'm sorry, $50,000 a year. Okay, it's $4,200 a month. So we're going to start with those numbers. Our goal is to get $4,200 a month. All right. We're going to start with the fact that we get the average Social Security, which is $1,900 and some change. We're going to round it up to $2,000 just for easy math. It's a lot easier to work with whole numbers, right? I'm not going to mix change and come up with dollars and cents. But if we're getting $2,000 a month from socials, we need $2,200 a month to hit our 42 total, our 50K a year. Now, based on average returns and using kind of the rule of 1,000, which is $240,000 a month put away, yields you a $1,000 a month add to your budget. So you got you have 500,000, you have double that plus. So you're going to need at least 500. That's going to get you $4,200 or $2,200 a month to get to your $50,000 a month. Okay, so that money based on that number will last you at least 24 years. At least 24 years. Now, I say that because with some of these optimization tricks, you can make that money last longer. And the reason that it goes away is because of the fact that how you increase your budget yearly based on how your cost of living increases makes a difference. All right. So let's also assume you only increase your cost of living expense wise by what Social Security does. So if you get Social Security always goes with cost of living adjustments every year, they get them. And so if you only add that to your budget and only increase your spending by that much, you can automatically turn that 24 years into 30 with the same money. And that's because you're not increasing how much you're going to withdraw based on how much you're spending. And what I would say is that what you're doing is you're going to rely completely on Social Security upping the ante every year for you with your cost of living expenses tied just to that. And if you do that and keep your withdrawal from your $500,000 the same, that money will last 30 years. Easy. And that's with a 5-year or 5% withdrawal and a 5% return. And now here's the thing, if you do a little bit better every year, maybe you get 6 or 7%. Well, then that amount of years that it lasts gets longer, obviously, because you're increasing that money based on 6 and 7% or 8% or whatever. I know people talk about getting 9, 10, 11, 12% while they're retired. That's great. I'm just saying, for the average guy that wants to be safe, if you can get 5%, you're in good shape. If you get anything above that, that's bonus land for most of us in regular living. And that means that you can extend your years of getting your money and not really spend more of your money every month. So what if you increase your withdrawal based on the way Social Security does, and you increase based on your cost of living? Well, let's just assume we're just going to use easy numbers. Social Security averaged 3%. Cost of living expense raises just about every year. If you increase your other withdrawal rate by that 3%, so I'm not saying you're going from 5 to 8%. I'm just saying if you add the 3% into your 2,200, you're going to be at 2,400. Let's just say that means that the money's going to last a little less, right? Because it's going to back it from 26 or from 30 years. It's going to back it all the way down to 24. So quite a significant difference just by increasing your withdrawal by 3% a month, which is not, like I said, not the total, but just 3% added on to 2,200. So it takes away the money that much quicker. Now, let's pretend that you don't have any Social Security and you're going to rely completely on this 401k money or this $500,000 you have in other assets for all of your expenses. So you're going to take $50,000 a year out of that, and you're going to make still with the average at 5%. Well, that money's only going to last you 12 years. So it does make a big difference. You've got to have some other income to help offset how fast you drain that pool of money. Now, there's lots of ways to do that, but I think most of us are going to get Social Security, right? Just about anybody that's has worked and accumulated the years. By the time they get to be in their 60s, you've got enough qualifying to get the minimum or something from Social Security. So I would suggest that everybody, at least plan on making some of that. Now, we've talked a lot about recently how these things deplete and how Social Security is going to have a hit sooner than we have been talking before, and it's going to start hitting it in 2034. However, even if you have the 20% discount, which is what they're talking about at that year, that's still better than zero. So if you start with 2,000 and you get 20% less, you're at 1,600. That's still 1,600. So you may have to take more from your 500, but at least you're maintaining your living cost of living or your living standard. And of course, you can always minimize how much you need. You can always find ways to cut corners. You can always get part-time work to help supplement your income without it impacting your Social Security. Again, there's lots of ways to make this work. So you just got to be a little bit creative. But planning based on how long you need that money to last is the most important part. And then finding a way to live within those means during that time period. And of course, as you age, your overall spending is going to decrease as well, because you're not going to be as active, you're not going to drive as much, you're not going to eat as much. there's a lot of things now that could be offset by your healthcare expenses. Either way, if you're withdrawing for less for food and groceries and gas and using that money instead to pay for expenses for medical and etc., at least you're not spending more. So anyway, some things to think about. 500K done a few different ways. There's ways to make the money last, and you can find them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.